Cool.
Andy,
Hey,
welcome to People in Legal.
Thank you.
On two bases, actually, we're doing this podcast, but also as well, you're joining us on the podcast.
I am indeed. Looking
So
forward to it.
we're doing a whole bunch of sessions today, so very much looking forward to it. How's the conference been so far?
Oh, well, I've only been here a couple of hours, Dave, but so far it's pretty good. It seems a slightly different feel from previous years. I've been here previous years, and it just seems to be a lot more collegial, actually, than I remembered in previous years. So so far, so good.
Awesome. So for our audience, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about your journey, like how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Okay, so currently I'm running my own consultancy business.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, I spent 11 years at LexisNexis.
Mm-hmm.
I joined LexisNexis as their head of sales for the New Zealand business, and then became the managing director. So I was the managing director for 6 years.
Yep.
And then I went over to the US and became the commercial lead for the Law 360 business over in New York. Spent 18 months and through various restructures, and that brought me back to New Zealand and end of career at LexisNexis. So for the last year or so, I've just been doing some development, personal development. I spent 6 months working with Sean and the crowd at File Republic.
Yeah, fantastic.
And just getting engaged with people in legal. So really looking forward to it.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess one of many things that you're actually able to do is actually like working with businesses that are maybe looking to come into the region, help him from a go-to-market standpoint as well, help him from those sort of angles? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, obviously, you know the Australian market very well, and indeed the UK market, and every market's got its own kind of peculiar and particular way of operating, and New Zealand's no different to that. And so, New Zealand being the type of country it is, being part of, the major playing nations of the world, a lot of businesses like to have operations here. But it is a different environment to work here. People are slightly different. I'm sure you Aussies like to think we're the seventh state of Australia, but we are a little bit different here. So yeah, I see that there's a number of businesses that struggle when they come to New Zealand, or certainly in their planning of coming to operate out of New Zealand, and they don't necessarily really understand the market before they come here. And then obviously when they're here, then they kind of go, gee, it wasn't quite what we expected. So so I think businesses looking to come to New Zealand, they do need to explore things a little bit more and try to understand the market a little bit more as well.
I mean, besides the amazing food here, the amazing weather, you've got a pretty decent rugby team as well.
Yeah, it's probably at its day though, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, amazing country. Why would people come to New Zealand?
I think New Zealand is probably the best way to answer it is that I'm English. I moved to New Zealand nearly 19 years ago with my wife and 3 daughters. So at that time I was working for a company called Avaya Communication. I came over to New Zealand working for Vodafone. I'd never been to New Zealand, and the interesting thing I found at that time when I moved over was it was like the UK was maybe 10 years earlier. It was there was work time and there was play time.
Yep.
You worked hard, but you also played hard, and I really enjoyed that balance. And to a certain degree, New Zealand still has that kind of environment, that kind of business environment. The culture is respectful of your play time or your non-work time. You do work hard and you do play hard. Obviously, that changes, and New Zealand needs to continue to compete in the global market. But I still feel that it has this kind of she'll be right, this kind of Kiwi mentality. And I think the biggest issue with being operating out of New Zealand is it gets to a level, you get to a ceiling quite quickly in terms of running a business and developing and growing a business. And the capitals, the ability to access capital is not so great. So, and that's where I think, Australian businesses and particularly UK and US business can operate and help Kiwi businesses quite a lot.
So is there anything in particular that would actually drive like a UK or US business to sort of, I guess, set themselves up with an APAC hub in New Zealand versus Australia or Singapore?
Well, I look, again, I think it's important that, whether I would look at setting a hub up in New Zealand as opposed to the US or Singapore or Australia or Singapore, I'm not so sure. But there's so many similarities of the New Zealand market that exist in Australia and the UK and the US. So there is an element of a rinse and repeat.
Yes.
But there is an investment that's still required. You can't just take what works in Australia or the US. and deploy it here in New Zealand and think it will work, particularly in the legal tech space as well.
Right.
So, there is an aspect within the legal market, with the legal practitioner market, is, if you're an Aussie, it isn't going to just work here just because it works in Australia. So I think there's an aspect of that. The setup costs and the upfront costs of setting up a business here is a lot less than it would be otherwise, because of that the other markets can work here.
Okay.
But you have to have boots on the ground.
Okay.
So that's really, really important. It's a very open market. Politically, it's a stable market.
Yeah.
Obviously some other parts of the world not quite so stable these days, but very stable market.
There's some smart people here. You've got there's a bunch of tech talent here as well. So you've got some great tech talent here locally.
Indeed.
Some good universities that actually feed into that tech talent. It's a bunch of reasons why people would actually look at this.
I think so. And look at, the New Zealand government are looking to try and invest in that tech space, whether it be legal tech or any tech. So, I think that there's a good talent pool here. By default, because of the type of country New Zealand is, we work in a way where we like to build ecosystems or work within ecosystems. We don't like to do it all ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's another good reason why businesses would potentially look to come into New Zealand. And the Lawfest conference, the Lawfest conference is about legal tech firms coming together.
Yeah.
And working out how they can operate together to actually provide better legal services, so legal practitioners can provide better legal systems and services.
And what are you hearing? What things are you hearing in the marketplace about I guess legal tech? What's on everyone's lips?
Well, I guess it's AI, and this conference all day long will be talking about AI. I've been to a number of conferences and a number of events talking about AI, and everyone's opinion of AI is very, very different. It's quite interesting. I use quite a lot of AI in my day-to-day activities and establishing and trying to build my business. And every day I'm learning more and more and more about this. And I think the biggest challenge to this market in New Zealand and this particular industry, the legal industry, is about adopting it. Don't be scared of it.
Yeah.
Work with it. Lawyers obviously make a lot of money because they're in the knowledge game, and that is their business. And of course, AI has much more knowledge than lawyers have. So there's a risk. But I think it's the businesses that learn to work with it are the ones that will survive and gain that competitive edge. And similarly, part of that ecosystem. So, I think the days of lawyers and law firms having their customers and being very focused on their customers is gone. Then they will need to continue or look to spread outside of that and work in that ecosystem much more.
I mean, how can AI actually enhance, I guess, a law firm's business development function?
I think AI can impact law firms in many, many, many different ways. Business development, obviously, it's you move away from Google and AdWords and all of that kind of stuff, and immediately you can get to a wider audience much quicker with a much clearer proposition. Your access to markets, your access to customers. Is much more broad. Again, I think the issue is that it's the old traditional ways of developing business that will be holding people back, rather than kind of go, well, this is the type of business I want to develop. Now get AI to help me do that.
Yeah.
So it's adoption. To me, it's adoption and being scared that this thing is going to take over their work.
I mean, what I guess I'm sort of seeing as a bit of a trend is that AI is under the hood versus actually and built in within the workflows versus basically here is a discrete AI product.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and again, I think that's a traditional way of how people think about using tech and going to market. Now, if you're someone like me that believes AI is it's a revolution, it's not an evolutionary step in tech and legal tech. So, somewhat similar to the Industrial Revolution. So if you think that, then this concept of it being under the hood or a particular product or putting some things together and going to market, then you're not using AI. You really don't understand AI.
Yeah.
It needs to totally disrupt the way you go to market in its entirety.
Yep.
You need to look, you need to look from the inside and take it out,
Yeah.
So I think, that, I mean, I hear people saying that exactly the same as what you, David, but I think they're talking about it in the wrong way. I think they need to be talking about how can we change the way we go to market? How can we bring AI and develop our products into the market in the future, not today.
And some people as well actually talk about AI, like how do you bill for AI? How does a law firm actually account for that? How they bill for it? Is it something they can actually, because some people sort of say we should actually sign as a timekeeper and we have a rate against that one there. Some people say, look, it's just, we just jack our fees up. I mean, there's different ways of people looking at it.
And again, I think, I don't think I've got the golden answer to that. Again, what I would say is just use AI. I think they should just use an AI as part of their current infrastructure. So I don't think it should be cheaper, more expensive. Yeah. It's just a way of ultimately adding value. So, that value can be added by an individual or tech or AI or whatever it might be. So for me, again, I think if businesses are thinking, law firms are thinking that, well, if I use an AI engine to do something, is it going to be, will the client pay for it because an AI engine's done it, or do I charge more because I've delivered the service quicker? Well, to me, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's the service that's being consumed. So it's the will or the trust that you're creating or the court case or whatever it might be, and move towards value based rather than what's being used to develop.
Exactly. I think that's actually, as a consumer of legal services, what I want to see is I want to sort of see a fixed price. I want to see something. I want to have some certainty around what I'm going to pay.
Absolutely.
And, if you use AI, if you use 10 people doing X, Y, Z, get the result for me.
And of course, put myself in a position of a practice manager at a law firm. Obviously, having AI in my business will enable me to control my costs much more, right? So the ability for me to deliver, fixed cost pricing and those kind of things is possible. And interestingly enough, markets like Australia and New Zealand and the US to a certain degree, where fixed pricing is not so common because it's not legislated like it is in other markets. Again, that could be an opportunity for businesses to gain a competitive edge, driving into a market that doesn't have fixed pricing, and utilize AI to help with that. So that's not necessarily delivering a better service to the client. That's helping the P&L. That's helping the cost base of the business. But AI needs to pervade in every part of every law firm, in many parts. As you said at the front end of the business, so business development. And in the back end as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch topics and actually sort of, for a minute, and actually talk about back to you and things. So if I'm actually a UK business or a US business and I want to actually look at the APAC and enter the APAC market, is that something you actually help these guys? Is there a conversation you have with these guys or talk to these guys about what they can do and how they can do it?
Yeah. You look, again, as I said right back at the beginning, I think sometimes coming in, a lot of businesses think, well, they've just got to take what they do in another market and just, rinse and repeat into New Zealand. I think there's an opportunity for businesses to come in and learn a little bit. That there are, not just myself, there are other people in this market, as there will be in other markets, that can help with those firms, can help with introductions, can help with what the market looks like, how it's structured, et cetera, it won't take a lot of time, but I do suggest to people, take that time up front. It's a much more costly exercise when you realise a year after you've launched that, you haven't got it right, you haven't got the people on, you haven't got the feet on the ground. So yeah, but then again, I guess, David, that's probably a similar thing to anyone going into any markets. You've got to understand the market you're going in, and if you do think it's just the same rinsing and repeating what you've done before, then it will only be luck if you're successful. You've got a plan to be successful.
I've seen some absolute car crashes where people have actually invested a lot of money into a marketplace without doing the planning.
Yep.
They've hired people, they've done a whole bunch of stuff which just hasn't worked out.
Yep.
I think having a consultant or somebody you can talk to who can help you through the go-to-market planning process, understanding the nuances of the marketplace, understanding what, who's in the market, and how to attack the market. I think that's actually a really valuable thing.
And maybe a slightly different way of looking at it is it's almost kind of using a mentoring type of situation.
Yeah.
So you know, a lot of firms would think, oh, gee, this is a big upfront cost to get a consultant in place that, you know, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars a day or whatever. Use it in a mentoring capacity, you know, so it's much more bite-sized kind of information. So they're learning about the market from a bite size, and then, you know, that formulates their questions, right, as they go down the path, rather than try and have everything they know before they go to market, then try and justify it in the market. You know, perhaps it's an iterative process, you know, get to understand the market as you go. So, you know, much more of a mentoring type of thing.
Brilliant. Well, actually, it's going to be great fun today. We're going to do a few podcasts and things like that. I mean, we're going to talk to some of the law firms here and vendors here as well and things. But welcome to People Legal.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, Andy.
Forward to it. Cheers, mate.